Welcome to episode 41 of the Yes You Coaching podcast. And I got a little treat for you today. I have a client, Victoria, who I've just finished working with. She came to me for private confidence coaching, and we tackled all of the stuff which is difficult for most of us, to be honest, at work. And she shares in this episode all about the things that she struggles with, her challenges, and they range around from really caring about what other people think, feeling like she cared too much about what people thought and the difficulties associated with that, not being able to switch off when she was on holiday, not being able to kind of manage her own time without worrying what other people thought she was doing during the day, training that she used to hate, and now maybe she doesn't hate so much. It's a wide-ranging and really interesting conversation, and it's nice to talk to someone who is open and honest, and we talk about the space to do that too. So I will get on with that episode in a minute, but just to tell you before that, I have another Grow Your Confidence class happening in May, on 11th of May. It's an online class, and if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't worked with me before, you are invited to come and take that class. So what that class does is it shows you the fundamentals of confidence building and general workplace well-being. Like, people bandy around this stuff about, oh yeah, we need to have well-being, we need to be resilient, but how do you actually do that? In this class, in just 60 minutes, I will show you all of the habits that you currently have, which might be getting in your way, and all of the habits that you need to adopt if you're gonna go after more confidence and this elusive workplace well-being and resilience. So I will leave a link in the show notes. Get into the class, invite anyone you know. It's free and it's going to be great. So without further ado, on with the episode. Welcome to the podcast, Victoria.
Hello.
Good to have you with us. So, if you're a frequent listener to the podcast, you'll know that I love to have people on, and the people that I especially love to have on are clients who either are working with me or who have worked with me, because it's great for me to ramble on about this like confidence building stuff to you guys in a kind of academic abstract way. But what's better, I think, is when somebody real actually comes and talks about what that was actually like and how they did it and the stuff they had to think about. So that you can hear it from someone who's actually experienced it. So that's what Victoria's, I call her Vic, but if you ever meet her, call her Victoria, because Vic is only for people who know her. She just told me. So do you want to just introduce yourself and just tell us who you are and a bit about the kind of work you do? Because I think the work you do is quite fascinating.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Victoria. I'm a solicitor. I work at Brown Jacobson, who, as lots of people know, are a big national firm. And I deal with healthcare advisory work. So it's basically everything patient facing that isn't a claim. So lots of court protection cases, like lots of the things you might see in the media, queries over funding, and some of it can be really emotive, and lots of it involves things like medical ethics. So yeah, I find it really interesting, and there's usually quite a sensitive side to things and quite an emotional side to things, which you can end up, helping people and clinicians who have got a big problem then try and find a good solution in somebody's best interests.
Yeah. So would it be, when you said stuff that's in the media, would it be the kind of thing like that Charlie Gard case?
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously the media may not report everything correctly, but that's sort of the ilk, yeah, those types of cases which are often reported. There's been a couple in the last 12 months of similar situations, like big medical treatment cases, and there might, for example, be either a dispute about the treatment that's proposed or a particular reason why a case has to go to court on the specific reasons. But yeah.
Okay. And so you're helping the
Public
NHS,
bodies, yeah, so
advising them, or public bodies. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, NHS, local authorities, private health and social care providers. So I don't act for individuals, but obviously the individuals are at the heart of all the
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah. Fascinating. I love that stuff. All right. So why don't you just tell us a bit about why did you come to me, and and want to do some of this work?
Yeah, of course. So I think that maybe on the outside, I might seem quite a confident, sometimes loud sort of
Mhm.
person, but actually that doesn't necessarily reflect the person I am inside. And actually, I can be quite shy, and I can also be quite reserved. And I think I can be that one person who's holding myself back in lots of situations. And actually, I'm the person who holds myself back in a work situation. And I think it had probably got to the point that I knew I needed to do something about it. You'd come along to our away day last year, and when we had it in Birmingham,
Oh,
and I just
yeah.
really, yeah, at the Bear Grylls Centre in front of a big fish tank, if I recall.
Oh my god, there was this huge fish behind my head the whole time.
It was very good, and it stood out. And I just thought that there's someone I can work with. And yeah, sometimes it's just good to try something different,
Mm,
because if you don't try something different, you're not going to make progress. So that was
yeah,
why. Mm.
yeah. And when you say I'm the thing that's holding me back, can you give us an
Mhm.
example? Like what does that mean? What did that actually mean in your day-to-day life?
So that, to give you one example, that could be me being my biggest critic. Whether it's about work that I've done, or for example, a, you know, a not great trait of mine is I will almost sort of crystal ball gaze as to how somebody may respond to something, or how a situation may play out, instead of just letting it play out. And by
Mhm,
doing that, you're putting up your own barriers, whether it's to sort of add stress onto yourself,
mm,
mean that you might be working extra hours when you don't need to, or really putting yourself down, instead of actually taking a step back and maybe recognizing the 100 good things that you've done.
mm,
Instead, one of those people, and I think lots of people are like this. Instead of focusing on all the good, you might focus on that one bad thing, and then that's it. You might then have a rubbish day, or think, I'm not good enough to do this, and it can snowball, and then it
mm.
becomes a habit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people will identify with that trait because so many people when they come to me and I'll say to them, "Are you one of those kind of people who you'll see like there'll be loads of good things and then your brain will like laser focus on this
Mhm.
one like little bad thing
Yeah.
and then you'll beat yourself up about it for 3 weeks and they're like, "Yeah, definitely, I'm like option B. I definitely would do that."
Absolutely. It's like when you date and you get the ick over something little. There could be 50 things that are great about somebody, but if they like chew loudly, and they're like, it's like, nope, that's it. Nope.
Yeah. Cool. All right, good. So there's a few things that and the conversation will probably stray all over the place as it tends to in these conversations, but there was a few like really particular things that
Mm.
we we or you decided that you wanted to work on as part of
Mm.
kind of overall confidence building.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go through some of those so that people can get a bit of the inside track on
Mhm.
how I help people with the stuff that goes on in their head at work. Because the
Yeah.
people listening to this podcast, they will have exactly the same stuff as you're talking about going on their
Mm.
inside at work, but they're probably not talking about it. They're probably not telling anyone.
Yeah.
And it's great to have somebody who's actually sharing it. So
Mhm.
the first thing is you said you wanted to stop worrying so much about what other people think or what other people thought.
Mm.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Again, it probably feeds into a little bit like the example I was saying before, but it's this assumption that I can think, well, so I already know what people think about me,
Mm,
and that part of that assumption, it might be negative. And so you're always looking for the negative. So it might, just to give you an example, whether it's thinking about whether I'm capable of doing a particular case, if you were going for a promotion, whether
mm,
you've done a particular piece of work, whether somebody had some feedback on it. And most of the time everyone's so busy and they don't have time to come back on every little thing. But I think for me, I know we've spoken before, where I've worked has always been really flexible, but post the pandemic, everybody's been working from home more than ever, myself included. And I found that working from home, while it's great, for me, it's allowed that extra time for my brain to stew. And because I'm not seeing people on a more regular basis, it's allowed my mind to wander. and then I'm almost creating opinions in my head that I think people think about me, which is, when you actually speak to that person, it's a load of rubbish. And my boss said to me the other day that she says really positive things about me and how people see me. But what she said to me is, I know you don't see it yourself, but
Mm.
people see you in this really great way. Um, and that's, and I will think, I worry about it. For example, if, at one point I do go for promotion in the future, I'll
Mm-hmm.
probably worry, what if I get it? And then what will people think when I get there? Is she really worth it? I can't believe she's got that promotion. So it's
Mm.
this big bundle of negative thoughts. And when we took a step back from it, and you think, where, we discussed the feelings, didn't we? And what does that mean, and how do you feel, and this particular concern, and it's all negative stuff that's not adding anything apart from, a weight on your shoulders. And if you're going through the day carrying all that negativity and fear about a situation that may never happen,
Yeah.
it's not it's silly, really. And it's easy for me to say that to you now, but it's very different when you're sat at your desk and you've been working away for a few hours, I think.
Yeah, and what actually is, because I think people will resonate with this. What is the impact on you of
Mm.
having all that, you call it like a jumble of worries, or like all those
Mm.
thoughts kind of going around and around when you're trying to do your work, meet your targets, deal with your
Mm.
clients, like lead team members?
Mm. Has a massive impact on your confidence. And you then start to, well, I then started to almost doubt my own ability and doubt my own thoughts and actions. So it has a real detrimental impact. Like I was saying, you're basically worrying about made up scenarios in your own head. It's not ideal, and it's very tiring as well. So it is actually mentally really tiring to carry around with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking about, I often like try to think of it from an external perspective. And I wonder what it would be like if somebody in your team was just like throwing in like random like possibilities, like that guy over there is looking at you funny. He probably thinks you did really badly on that last piece of work. You'd be like, what?
Yeah, it's horrendous. When you actually
Yeah.
think of it like that, it's awful, but that's your brain, sorry, plays tricks on you, as we've discussed.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you work through some of that, and where do you feel you've got to with it?
I do feel like I've made massive strides with it. I think it's always going to be an ongoing piece of work, but I do feel now I've got the tools to keep that under check.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually taking a step back sometimes and working out, what is it I'm worrying about? So in that moment, am I really worried about what Joe Bloggs thinks? Or is there something under that? What's the emotion? That's one big thing, isn't it, that we discussed, that I found personally really useful. Is there something else that's going on? And B, actually saying things out loud. Again, that's something that's so simple that when we've worked together, I found really helpful.
Yeah.
Again, when I'm working at home and you might not have seen anyone for a good few hours, actually saying, I'm worried that Joe Bloggs thinks I'm rubbish at my job. When you say it out loud to yourself and you think, I actually really don't care. And it really helps. That's a really simple
Yeah.
tip, but it really helped me. So I definitely think I've got the tools to harness that and basically just put it away, because I've recognized that it's not adding any value either to my confidence or, my day-to-day job. It's certainly not spurring me on and making me any better at my job.
Yeah. And actually, I think there was a couple of times where we would start coaching on something like this Joe Bloggs example. This Joe Bloggs thinks I'm rubbish at my job. And then you actually just said it out loud. What am I worried about? I'm worried that he thinks I'm rubbish at my job. And then you actually didn't need any more
No.
coaching on it. You were like, oh no, it's
No.
fine. And you had
Yeah.
another time where you were like, oh, that actually, I am pissed off about that email. And then you were like, oh no, actually, it's fine. We could talk about something else now. I was
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Things can be such huge situations in your head,
Yes.
but until you've either spoken to somebody about it or said it out loud, and then you can
Mhm.
almost recognize it, you think, oh, I don't care what they think, or they probably haven't thought about me at all this week. So why am I wasting so much time worrying about that? But it's recognizing it and dealing with it head on,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually that bit of that tip that Vic just gave you guys for free is gold, because we spend, especially for people who now I think it's more problematic now because people are working at home and they're more isolated. But even if you're not, this kind of thinking does isolate you, because you're
Mm.
probably not going to tell everyone in the office, oh, I'm really worried about what Joe Bloggs is thinking about me. You're probably just not going to do that. So when you
Mm.
keep it all on the inside, it creates this shame, and it just creates these problems, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger in your head. And then when you were able to be like, I'm worried about what Joe thinks about me, and then you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, I'm really not.
Yeah. So for anyone who's listening, like, say the thing that your head is saying, try saying it out loud. Even if you can't say it out loud to another person, try saying it just out loud, and just then see how that feels, and see what happens. And actually, that is one thing I always wonder. How was it for you to say all that stuff out loud to me? Because so often when people
Mm.
start working with me, they have never uttered really
Mm.
much of what goes on inside their work brain to another human being.
Yeah.
How did that feel for you?
There was a couple of sessions, wasn't there, where there was certain topics that we were discussing that I found more difficult to be open about than others, not because there's anything bad, but for that exact reason, I'd not necessarily had that open conversation or even said it to myself before.
Mm,
And it's that moment where you think, oh my gosh, am I all right saying this? Or are you going to judge me? Even though you make it clear there's no judgment.
mm,
And even though it just you feel a bit panicked when you're saying it, it's almost, it's the old adage, isn't it? A problem shared is a problem halved. And it is amazing how quickly that sort of fear dissipates. And it's actually quite empowering to get stuff off your chest. But yeah, there was some moments where I did think, oh, I'm going to sound stupid,
mm,
or this sounds really crazy, or even times when you think that, I can't actually put into words how I'm feeling.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And I think that is something that can build over time. And I've certainly had that experience of, I would never have told people the stuff that my brain comes out with in the past. I thought it was evidence that I was just some flawed weirdo, and keeping it all on the inside, for me, it created a lot of, it was shame, actually.
Mm.
And it made things 10 times harder than they needed to be.
Mm.
So I'm happy to provide a place for other people to actually say it, because we need to say it. We need to be able to say
Mhm.
it because it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that safe space, and that's what I really valued. I think one of the things that I massively got from coaching was having that safe space each week.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And and to that, like, I enjoy providing that, but it's amazing for me to be in a place with you where I don't have to make any judgment at all. Like, it's very free.
Mm.
I just hear whatever comes, and I'm like, oh, right, great. We'll just work with that then.
I think actually what has, or another thing that's been reassuring is there's been times when I've said stuff and just thought, oh, does that make me a bad person? Or I can't believe I've just said that. Or do other people have the same worries? And it's that reassurance that you have heard it all before, isn't it? And again, that, and you said it, that has helped me actually at times, because you think, oh, I'm not going crazy,
Mm.
or there's not something wrong with me. Actually, there's a wider issue, and lots of people struggle for lots of different reasons in relation to confidence. And so I found that reassuring, that people are obviously able to open up to you, and you realize you're not alone in
Yeah,
feeling the way you do.
absolutely. And I always think, oh, well, it's evidence that, like, this podcast has had over 3,000 listens. So if you and me were the unique individuals that only have this stuff going through their heads, I don't think that anyone would spend their precious time
No.
listening to this podcast, but they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other thing that one of the other things that we talked about was your and I guess this kind of branched off from worrying about what people think, but it was really about feeling confident to manage your own
Mhm.
time and not needing to explain your actions, because you're fairly senior, you're trusted in your team, you're trusted in terms of what
Mm.
you do. What was the problem in that for you?
I think there'd been sort of historical scenarios, sort of a previous life, so to speak, where I didn't maybe have the freedom as I do in my current job. And I
Mm,
think I just got so used to thinking in that rigid way, and I'd never got out of the hang-ups of sort of the previous way of working, so to speak. Um, and so I just got into this really bad habit of effectively needing permission to do anything. And again, where the firm I'm at the moment has always been really flexible. That's never been an issue, and my team in particular is so supportive and so flexible. And part of that is because they expect you to work hard, but you get the benefits like lots of places. And equally, I don't do a 9 to 5 job because the nature of the work doesn't sort of fit neatly in 2 hours like that.
mm,
So it's always been a case of if you do what you need to do, if you go to court, you do your meetings, and if for example, need an appointment in the afternoon or you want to go and do this, that's fine. But for some reason, my brain has just never been able to accept that. It's almost like, aha, is this a trick? And when I actually do that one day, I'm going to be caught out and I'm going to get into trouble, which again is silly, but that's how I felt. And that's taken a lot of work, as you know. Just trying to think the time when you first said to what, just go to Tesco. So just so when people are listening, one of the first things I did was like, right, I'm just going to go to the shops. I'm just going
yeah,
to do it.
in
A
the
big,
middle
a
of the
big day,
workday, in the
middle
middle
of
of
the
the
workday. I'm
workday.
going to go to big Tesco. And I did. I managed to go to big Tesco, and it was really hard because I felt this pang of, oh, what, I'm from way, I'm away from my laptop for 20 minutes, and I might miss something. And all these things started to go through my head. And I remember saying to you, I just decided, right, the hardest bit is going through the door. And
Yeah.
then once I was at Tesco, it was fine. I came back and, got like 2 emails from, outside companies that have nothing to do with my actual job. So nobody had even tried to get hold of me in that 20 minutes. And
Hmm.
then it's been, obviously, as you know, been building up. So spending either a longer work break to go to the gym, which is really important again, I think, for sort of easing stress and confidence,
Yeah.
anxiety. So, and that's something that actually is massively supported by my team. And I don't know how many times they, have told me that. And it's seeking that reassurance. And what I wanted to stop doing is seeking that reassurance when I knew what the answer would be, which is, of course, you can go and do that, Vic. Why are
Yeah.
you asking? You manage your own time. And also, nobody's sort of snooping on what colour I've gone on Teams. I
Yeah.
don't do it to other people, nobody does it. And I think I've now got to a place where I feel really comfortable with doing that. Obviously, sometimes I will tell people if it's a particularly busy day,
Hmm.
but I think having that flexibility has been massive for my confidence. And also, I think for sort of general mental well-being, you can plan your day
Mm.
around your life in a sense, as opposed to
Mm.
it all being about work. And like I said, if you're doing stuff like walking the dog, getting out fresh air, or like we were saying, in the past, it might just be going and making a cup of tea for 5 minutes and just sitting away from your computer.
Yeah.
That's massive positive impact. And I definitely think that's one of the things I've really improved on since starting coaching. I think I've sort of got it in the bag really now.
Yeah, I think you do. I think you'd nail I thought, "Oh, she's nailed it." The first time you were like, "I paused on the threshold of the door, and then I went to Tesco's." I was like, "She's nailed it."
It was such a big thing at the time though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it was
Yeah.
really, started to become a big thing in my head. But yeah, yeah.
And that probably speaks to other people's experiences in terms
Mm,
of I bet there's loads of people that listen to this podcast where there is stuff at their work which is okay.
mm,
They are in a team which is supportive. They are in a team which is helpful. They're in a team which, is not gonna give them a load of shit if they make a mistake. Like, they're in a generally supportive environment,
mm,
but they still, like, second guessing themselves. They're still not sure. They still some stuff still feels kind of unsafe. And you get that rub point where you're like, "Well, in theory, everything's okay. Like, no one's gonna give me shit for this." But I still don't just quite feel able to do the thing that I'm trying to do,
yeah.
or I still don't feel that comfortable or confident. And that I think that's a really neat example of how sometimes you just need to just get into what's going on in your brain a little bit and just kind of shake it loose
Mm.
until you're able to do the thing, right? Until you're able to get on the threshold and then go to Tesco's. And then when you do that, you kind of discover, oh, actually, it was okay. It was
Yeah.
safe for me to do it. Nothing really bad happened. It was okay. And then maybe you kind of test a little bit more and a little bit more, and you don't need to seek the reassurance, and then it's fine. And then you're flying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, when you think about stuff like that, like you being able to support your own mental health and well-being by taking a longer walk with Lupin. Lupin is
Mm.
Vic's beautiful dog. He sits and sometimes and listens in on our coaching sessions. Um,
Supervising, he's a
he
good supervisor,
supervises,
isn't
yeah, or goes to the gym and all
he?
of that stuff. That when we get into that mindset where we get so like fixed and stressed, we don't do the very stuff that's actually going to help.
And actually, in turn, I work better because of it, because I
Mm,
feel more refreshed. What I discover personally is having breaks, whether it's exercise, fresh air, or just sitting with Lupin for 10 minutes, is I'm far more productive when I do go back to my computer as opposed to sort of sitting there in frozen fear.
yeah,
um, so
yeah.
it's reminding myself of that.
And actually, that reminds me of another thing, which you
Mm.
might want to talk about, which is switching off when you're on holiday.
Yeah, that was another very successful outcome, wasn't it? Because I've
Mm,
never been able to do that. Again, this is all habit driven, and I must say, my employer does not expect me to be doing anything when I'm on holiday. It's this expectation of you should take a break. This has all been in my head,
mm,
as to me not being able to take a break, and it's this worry of I trust people completely, but you worry, oh, if I left too much for people to do, and what if something goes wrong? And again, the nature of my work, you think, oh, what if something urgent's come in, because that's
yeah.
what happens, and you basically think, oh, the extreme side of your brain will think, well, I might as well just not go on holiday, which is just stupid. And again, that having a holiday is so important. We discussed, obviously, what I think I said to you, I sometimes just feel I don't deserve a holiday, and I don't know where that comes from. But it's
Mm,
going to the emotional side of it, isn't it? And breaking down, of course, you deserve a holiday. You work hard,
mm,
you're entitled to your holiday. These are all the fabulous things that going on holiday brings.
mm.
And I had 2 weeks off March. And so we really worked towards me, and we worked towards a plan, didn't we, as to
Yeah.
what the prep would be. And it was all built up to going away. And I think the first couple of days, I was a bit like, oh, what's going on?
Mm.
And then I remember saying to you, by the third day, I didn't care. I was mentally checked out, and then spent the rest of the 2 weeks like loving life and didn't think about work at all. So I came back from holiday so rested, and I went to Venice, and the friend I went with literally turned around to me and said, "You look like so refreshed and so relaxed. It's so lovely to see." And I thought,
Mm.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah, I remember we thought about putting your work phone in a tin.
Yeah. And I did put it in a biscuit tin, and it went away, and I didn't look at it. But it can be done, I think, is the message.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're listening and you're thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm like that on holiday." And like what Vic's saying is the logical side of her brain
Mm.
knew that taking a holiday and actually switching off was a good idea, but there was a disconnect between that and like this emotional inside of, "Oh my God, but what if this happens?" And I don't want to dump stuff on people and
Yeah.
something urgent can come in and all of that. And it was just getting into that. Yeah, there's the practical bit of putting your phone in a tin, right? But there's the
Mhm.
mindset bit of let's actually spend a little bit of time with that part of you that's actually has legitimate worries about all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and let's actually bring them out and open it up and be like, okay, great. What are they? What's really true? What's actually going on? And like just spending a bit of time there. And once we'd done that,
Yeah.
off you went.
Yeah. On my gondola in Venice, not thinking about work at all.
Yeah. And what do you think it'll mean for the rest of your career that now every time you go on holiday, you're going to be able to switch off?
I think it's a massive impact. I think holidays are so important for everybody. And people can't be working at 100% all the time, and I don't think companies expect you to. And certainly my employer doesn't. And I think if your own mental health, work-life balance, whether you're going
Mm,
away with friends and family, but also I came back from holiday feeling, almost, obviously not super excited to be back at my desk, but glad of routine again. And
Mm.
that to me felt like that's the sign of me having a good rest, because I was then looking forward to getting back into the day to day. So I think going forward, that will be huge. So, for example, I've booked a few days off later in the year, and I've booked that now knowing and feeling confident that I'm able to enjoy that and not worry about it like I used to. So
Yeah.
it's life changing without sounding corny. Ah, yay!
Good. Good. And I wish that for everyone because I think we do need time out. We do need to
Mm.
refresh, not even machines need time off actually, otherwise they cry. I'm
Mm.
gonna say humans are we're not machines, but actually machines need time off too.
Yeah.
Cool. And one of the other things that I wanted to kind of talk about, and actually I'm not even sure if I'm linking the two things correctly together here, but one of the things that you wanted to look at was needing to control everything.
Mm.
What did that mean to you?
I think sort of coming from a anxious viewpoint with
Mm,
everything, it's this: if you can see things and can control things, you can almost prevent, and this is just to give one example, maybe the unexpected happening, which might sound silly considering the job I do, but it's almost like the more you control in your life and your work, the less things are going to come along that, for example, might scupper your confidence or might upset you or make you feel sensitive. So it's protecting yourself almost from those bad emotions.
mm,
But obviously, the flip side to that, as we dug into it, is physically, I can't control everything,
mm,
but also neither should I. And again, yeah, I think it does link in with holiday, doesn't it? Because one of the reasons I was worried before going was, oh gosh, how am I going to, work out who's going to cover what, and is someone okay to do this? And actually, it's a breath of fresh air to just let things be and just think what will be will be. People will pick things up, and having trust in your team because it's absolutely there,
mm.
and that acceptance that you cannot control every situation. And again, that can take a while to accept, but when you do, it's quite liberating.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, if something does go awry or if something does go wrong, you don't automatically make it mean, and I'm shit at my job.
Yeah, that. Yeah, which is what I was always doing.
And
Or,
that's what everyone I work with does. They're like, this thing went wrong, this thing, didn't go as I wanted. And
mm,
therefore it's like the prophet of doom. It means I'm
mm,
shit at my job. I shouldn't be here. What are other people going to think about me? All of this and all of
yeah,
that stuff means that we attempt usually to control everything so that we don't have to get exposed to that because it feels
yeah,
unbelievably awful.
yeah, yeah. But in turn, obviously, controlling everything is, again, very stressful.
Yeah.
And are you carrying around lots of, at times negative and draining thoughts along with that?
Yeah. And what does that mean for someone on a Tuesday morning, for instance?
I mean, yeah, I think those emotions can turn a day that might be sort of an average Tuesday, say you get stuff in that might be fairly stressful, into an uncontrollable stressful day, and it might feel like the worst day ever. And I think we've discussed before, when I've felt like that, then I might not sleep. Then that
Mm,
then turns into a bad Wednesday, and it snowballs into, instead of it being a bad couple of hours, because you feel like, oh, I've not been able to control that, it's all gone out the window. It then has this knock-on effect far bigger than when you actually say out loud, like we were saying before, if you actually say out loud how it all started and what was the issue,
yeah.
it was probably something fairly insignificant, but it has a massive impact.
Yeah. And people bandy around loads of words, don't they, in like work pop psychology. And one of the things that I think people talk about is resilience. We're all resilient. It's like, well, that's how you actually for some people who are thinking, what the hell does that even mean? That's how you be resilient, how Vic just described. You work out, how do I deal with myself? How do I manage myself when stuff maybe is a bit difficult or goes awry? And how do I actually support myself so that a normal, a slightly shit Tuesday doesn't turn into a terrible week where I don't sleep and I don't do any of the good stuff that's actually going to help me? That's resilience.
Yeah, it's accepting. I think as we said, sometimes crappy days will happen. It happens to all of us, whether at work or things
Yeah.
out of work. And obviously, you played a bit of a trick on me that I didn't see at the time. Where the upshot of it was that it was sort of don't know how best to explain it. I mean, maybe you should explain yourself on this one.
No, I still feel bad about this. I played a dirty trick on Victoria. Um, I can't actually remember what the scenario was or what we're coaching on, but basically I tried to get her to think about it from can you remember what the scenario was? From her boss's point of view.
Mm.
If was it like if something goes wrong? Like,
Oh, I
or can we
remember
use that as an
now.
example? Go on.
Yeah, it was something like if X happened, who do you think is, for example, a good role model for being resilient and being kind and dealing with things in a great way? So I said my boss,
Yeah.
um, because he genuinely is, as much as I would like cringe giving him a shout out, but he is. And
Yeah.
so I would say, yeah, he would do this, this, and this, and yeah, he'd probably say this, and that's really sensible. And I thought that would be sort of that sounds great. And actually, what you were trying to say to me is, Anna,
Do you do all of those things that you have just said is the good way of doing things
and I
for
said no.
yourself? And you were
No, I
like,
do not.
yeah, well, you were quite mad with me at first. And then you were like, no, I do not. And I do this dirty trick on people all the time in trainings that I do. So I like
Oh.
have them set out in detail. What would your boss be like if you were at your most confident, your most resilient?
Mm,
Yes, there's always going to be stuff that happens. There's always going to be stuff that goes wrong. There's always going to be something where you don't know what you're doing. That's a
yeah.
guarantee. But what kind of boss would you need in order to be at your most confident and your most effective? And people say stuff like somebody who wouldn't beat me up if I made a mistake, they wouldn't continually remind me of it. They might, help me to see the learning from it, and then they would let it go and we would move on. And they speak to me with respect. They know that I'm good at my job. They remind me of that. They encourage me. They're not like throwing shade at me or doubting my ability. They're yeah, all of that. And then I say to people, "Okay, are you doing that for yourself?" And everyone's like, I mean, no." I'm like, "Okay, so you want it from the outside, and maybe you've got it from the outside, like you had it from the outside. You have a great external environment which you work in, which is
Mm,
brilliant. But the internal environment,
yeah.
like the boss that lives in our own head, is mean, rude, doubting, critical, if you make a mistake, they remind you of it for the next 3 weeks. They tell you you're crap at your job. Like,
And the
and
rest.
yes, maybe more than 3 weeks. So when you're working in that environment on the inside, you have to recognize what happens to me when I'm working in that environment. What most people realize is it feels really shit.
Mm.
And I'm sorry I played that dirty trick on you, but I think it had the
It
desired
was
effect.
eye-opening. It did indeed, yeah.
I have since done some reflective practice on that, in everybody, in case you're interested, about whether I play that so much as a dirty trick or I tell
I
people what
think you
I'm doing.
should. No, I think you
Oh, do
should because
you?
I think it's got more of an impact, yeah.
Yeah, it kicks you in the face in a nice
Mm.
way. What do you like hearing me say that? What do you think your internal environment is different now than it was when we started coaching? Like the boss that lives in your head,
Mm.
what are they like? What were they like and what are they like now?
Yeah, probably very at the time we first started coaching, they'd got very demanding,
Mm.
not very understanding, um, and would be the type of boss that would remind you of a mistake when you happen to wake up at, say, 2 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. That sort of boss. And you'd be like lying there thinking of every mistake you've made for the last 10 years, that type of supervisor.
Yeah.
Whereas I think now definitely again it's a work in progress because my brain can, like lots of us, can just go a bit wild sometimes, but I
Mhm.
feel like I've definitely got it under control. And I feel like now I've got the tools to just put my boss, that my brain and the boss that's in my brain back in its place sometimes and question things
Mm.
and actually accept and say things out loud. So again, some of the stuff we've been saying out loud is nice things, which I found hard.
Oh,
And
yeah.
congratulate yourself for something. But I think that's been really good because in a way that's what a nice boss would congratulate you and say, "Oh,
Yeah,
you've
they
done
do.
this well," or, "Good job."
Yeah.
And so that's been a big change in a sense of now I will try and actually notice something that's gone well. And even if I'm cringing when I say it, saying it again out loud, like I
Yeah.
would have said to you.
Yeah. And that was one of the things you said at the beginning. You were like, I need to be able to toot my own horn
Absolutely.
and I want to be able to, but it makes me cringe.
Literally die inside. Yeah. It's just, I'm not that sort of person. And hats off to people who are, but yeah, again, I think it's that default in my brain of always going to the negative and trying to
Mm.
make a joke about it instead of, no, actually, I did a good job, or
Yeah.
I did my best, or oh, that went
Yeah.
really well. That's good.
Yeah.
And I found that really difficult, for
Yeah.
quite a while.
I think at the beginning of our coaching, I don't even think you would have been able to say those phrases out loud.
No.
And for people who coached with me before, you'll be laughing because I make everybody acknowledge themselves at the end of a session. And I think Vic was standard in that she was just like, "Oh, what?" Most clients are like, "What the hell is she talking about?" And they're British and they're really nice. So they never say, "Well, you're an idiot. What are you talking about?" And I try and say, "Oh, do you know, it's really important to build the habit of like
Mm.
acknowledging yourself because everybody likes to be acknowledged and it helps with confidence." And I always just feel like such an
I think
idiot, but I know that it's true.
it's important. I remember the first thing I said was, "I'm a good dog mum," because I had nothing else in my
Yeah,
life to sort of say. I was like, I can look after an animal.
that
That's
is
my
good.
positive. It
Yeah,
is
you
good
did.
actually, yeah. Um, but again, that's sort of me scratching around for something instead of actually, no, it's, I can think about that I did that was good, or, go me. It's
Yeah,
hard, but I am working on it and I've been able to do that more and it's not actually felt as sickening inside when I've done it.
that's cool. And I
Mm.
think you've actually been able to do it out loud and to other people as well, right?
Absolutely. And, one of my bosses said to me a while back that everyone's busy. So unless you are telling people what you've done,
Mm,
not everyone's going to know. And it's important that people do know. So having the confidence to send that email or say, oh, by the way, I did this.
yeah,
You can't expect everybody to know everything that you've done to get the recognition you deserve.
yeah,
That's what she said to me. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that you deserve. And I think that also it can lead people nicely to the moment where if you're having an interview or you're going for a promotion or something, that's the moment where you really have to tell them what
Mm.
you've done and what you did really well. They want to hear it.
I'm
But
a
when
good
you're
dog
sat
mum.
there like, yeah, I'm a good dog mom. But in
Hire
that
me.
situation, if you're not used to doing it, it's even harder and it can be so
Mm.
cringe, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it might come across quite false as well, whereas the more you do it, the more natural it is. Like, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong, I don't love sort of shouting from the rooftops, but I will now acknowledge, "Oh, actually that was pretty good, or I'm pleased with myself, and it feels nice."
Yeah. Yeah. And it's good to hear you say that because I just always think, you know, you good person doing good work, putting in effort, and that deserves to be acknowledged. And and a lot of the time in our workplaces, especially when you get more senior, you don't have someone acknowledging everything you do all the time. Sometimes people do, and that's great. But mainly it sort of goes without saying. Yet I think you deserve acknowledgement. All of us deserve acknowledgement for the stuff that we do.
Mm,
And there's someone there 24/7 that can do it, and it's you.
mm.
Actually, I'm working with a client at the moment, and she just hated doing the acknowledgement first. And today she couldn't. She was getting scrambled because she was like, "Oh, I've actually got like 3 things," and I was like, "Okay, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished." Um, the last kind of oh no, well, there's a couple of other things I want to ask you about, but one of them, which I just found our coaching on this just hilariously brilliant, was to do with training. And
Yeah.
you kind of said at the beginning, no, it's one of those things that it is part of my role. And the more senior you get, like you have to do training for clients and it's something that you have to do. And you were like, I absolutely hate it. Oh, you tell us in your words, like tell them what
It's
you told me at the
it's
beginning.
yeah, just it's not me.
Hmm.
Really dislike it. Feel very self-conscious, very nervous. Just a no from me,
Yeah. I can
basically.
tell you all that she used way more explicit language than that.
Yeah, I was yeah.
Yeah. So what tell us about tell us about that.
Well, like you said, it is part of my role, and I suppose as well, it's something that I wanted to tackle because it's a bit like the confidence thing in general. I think I just got sick of feeling so anxious about effectively talking to a room full of, they're always really nice people. Clients are lovely, and you get to speak to people and have a chat, and it might be what, an hour max, and it's about something that I know. So on the
Yeah.
face of it, it shouldn't be that difficult. And I was getting a bit frustrated that I was, every time about to deliver training or, presentations and things like that, that I was feeling so anxious and so nervous because it might, affect the night before. I might not sleep. I might worry, for example, or what if I don't know the answer to a question, or what if I stumble on my words, etc. And it ended up becoming this big monster
Mm.
that I knew it really did not need to be.
Yeah. And one of the things that like really stuck in my mind when we were coaching was that you realized you actually didn't hate training at all. You said, I hate my thoughts about training.
Yeah, I think again, it's not the actual standing in don't mind public speaking in itself. I don't mind. But it's the thoughts about it. It's thinking, "Oh, I've got that training session, so I know I'm gonna be stressed about it. I'm probably not gonna sleep the night before,
Yeah.
and then I'll probably beat myself up during, not because I don't find the topic engaging or I'm not gonna chat, but in the back of my mind, I'm gonna be thinking, someone's gonna ask me a question I don't know. Someone's gonna ask me a question I don't know." And it's all that stress around it, and
Mm.
it was that that in turn stressed me out.
Yeah. And so you hated the experience of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think when we started coaching on it, you started like putting your hand up to do all of these different
I know. I thought,
trainings.
"Well, I'm gonna do it." I ended up yeah, it was quite timely, wasn't it? I put my hand up and ended up just how it fell with all these different things, in person, remote, all sorts of things, and I ended up, um, talking at what was actually quite a massive event, um, like, ridiculous scale from what I was moaning about before.
Hmm.
And it was all fine. I got all prepared, and then the morning I ended up speaking to you, didn't I? Because I was in my hotel garden pacing around a rose bush, like I can't do this. I can't do this. I've got no confidence. So we had a little bit of coaching,
Yep.
and it was okay. And yeah, okay. The day was sort of heightened anxiety. However, it went fine. I actually felt as soon as I got on, the stage and was speaking, my voice was loud. I don't actually think you could tell at all that I was nervous. And like I was saying to you, the day was great. I got to chat to lots of people. I had a good laugh at points. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and so the day itself, again, feeding into it wasn't the training itself that I'm generally worried about. The day was fine. The problem was then my brain, because then I got into the car and drove home. My brain was going, oh, well, at 2 minutes past two, where you stumbled over your words, and then you end up beating yourself up on the way home and rehashing things. And what if Joe Blogs in the front row thought this about you?
Yes.
So that was then the follow up, wasn't it? I did the training. It was
Yeah.
then controlling my brain afterwards.
Yeah, and what you probably didn't think of at the time, which nobody really thinks of, is that if you don't have the skills to spot what your brain is doing after when you're in the car and to cut it off it will go on its merry way, pointing out what you did at 2 minutes past 2 and how Joe Blogs in the front looked like they weren't having a great time and blah, 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 blah. And how, oh my God, I didn't make a great impression. I'm gonna lose my job, blah, 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 all of
Yeah.
that, right? Your brain will go on that track because that's what everybody's brain does. But what you don't realize is that feels really bad at the time, but it also has a lasting impact. So if your brain is going off on that track, guess what happens next time you have to do training?
It makes it worse, and you feed into that, and it becomes a negative experience,
Right.
etc., etc. Yeah.
Exactly. The next time you come to do it, your stress response is you're already like on a high alert
Mm.
because you've got all of these stories going through your mind. You know, even if you're not thinking about it, that you're going to beat the crap out of yourself after the event if you make so much as make one tiny little mistake. And that is like your boss sending you out there and being like, Vic, your whole career and your job and your reputation is riding on this next 15 minutes. You better not stumble on any of your words. You need to make this perfect. You have to be very articulate and you must know the answer to every question. Like, God, they're
Mm.
like a shaking wreck.
Yeah.
But that's what your brain's doing.
Yeah. And that's what I did on the way back when I overanalyzed and then literally lay awake in
Yeah.
bed all night, like worrying about it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Have you done another one since? Weren't you gonna do another one? An online
Yeah.
one?
So what have I done since? I've done a couple of things. I did do
Ooh,
a couple of other things online. Yeah. And very nerve-wracking. However, a lot better. And I did stick my hand up for something else. So I think I'm definitely broken the back of that. Um,
fab.
yeah. And it was even pointed out to me that, gosh, you are pushing yourself outside your comfort zone at the moment. I was like, yes, I am.
I am expanding my comfort zone. Oh, good for you. Good for you. Good for you. Yeah, I always clients probably don't know this, but when they tell me like, "Oh, I've got this big thing on Tuesday comes," and I'm always thinking, "Don't message them, Anna. Just leave them. They're fine. They don't need you to message them." I'm thinking about them. I'm like willing
Oh.
them to do a good presentation. I'm like thinking, "I hope they can remember everything." So when they text me and they're like, "I'm pacing round a rose bush. I need help." I'm like, "Okay, we've got you." Brilliant. Um, cool. Yeah. Last real kind of substantive thing I wanted to ask you about, unless there's anything else you want to talk about. These interviews always go on longer than I think.
Mhm.
Is your kind of the methods and the sort of structure that you've put in place to kind of just make sure that you're taking care of yourself and reminding yourself how you want to approach things and just like me and Vic have finished our coaching now.
Mm.
And so she like now goes off into her work world and it's just keeping all of this stuff with you, the good skills, the good techniques, like all of that stuff. Can you tell people a little bit about how you're doing that and how you've done that?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's lots of little things add up to lots of positive things. And it's the little things when I stop doing them that I notice big negative impacts. So I've said it before. So, for example, fresh air,
Mm,
exercise is a massive thing, eating properly,
mm,
because that then leads on to not sleeping properly. And when my sleep goes, again, that has a massive impact on my work week, even if there might not be anything that on paper would knock your confidence. If you've had a really crappy sleep,
mm.
everything feels worse, no matter
Yeah,
how confident you may be or how happy you may be about things. Bad sleep, for whatever reason, can make an okay day into a crap day. Um, so it's little things like that. Taking regular breaks. Again, that feeds into managing my own time, but that's something little but really important. And then also just writing down little prompts to remind myself of these little things, so I keep doing it, so that when I'm not stressed, oh, I've got to sit at my desk for the next 10 hours and not move.
mhm,
No, actually, it's okay if I go and do this and eat a healthy food instead of not eating, or going to get, something crappy instead. And having that work life balance, however it works for the individual, I think is really important, because it just gives
yeah,
you a bit of perspective.
yeah,
And I think taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's so, so important.
hmm, yeah, yeah. And I was kind of impressed at how you did that and how you went about that and how you're very committed to it. I think you're better at it than
Mm,
I am, to be honest. In and one of the things that I think really helped was actually writing down, no, no, this is how I'm going to approach things. And I do encourage all my clients to do this. Like, let's make a rule that you can just follow that works for you
mm,
about how I will go away from my desk if I'm feeling like this. I will go and get some fresh air during the day. I
mm.
will say how I'm feeling out loud. Like all of this stuff that you learn so that when you're stressed and when there's a difficult moment, you don't need to try and remember all that. You can literally like look at your rule or think about your rule and just be like, this is just how I do things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Becomes a
think,
healthy habit, doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah, as opposed to like, because we have so much of what I do with people is just like looking at the habits of thinking, believing that you already have and
Yeah.
where those habits aren't getting you the result you want. How do we shift you out of those and shift you into some new, nicer habits that are going to help you? Does that mean everything's
Yeah.
going to be perfect all the time? No,
Mm.
but that's
Well,
really what it's to help you with.
and one of the big things as well is because I go into the office as and when I can. I don't live that far from the office. Like lots of places, it's flexible working, but we've discussed when I'm feeling maybe stressed. Obviously, there's certain days where you just want to, all right, okay, I'm going to stay at home and power through. But on other days, there can be real value for me personally in going in and seeing people and chatting through, and just the action of getting up, putting a nice dress on, traveling into town, getting a coffee on the way,
Yeah.
can just set me up for the day. And again, I think that's a little bit of self-care, isn't it? Oh, I'll treat myself to a overly expensive coffee this morning. I'll put my nice dress on and I'll put my nice lipstick on. Um, but again, little things like that, I think, go a massive way to improving confidence for me.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for sharing all that. That's great to hear it. Is there anything else that you would want to say to people or that you'd want to share with people? Because the people listening to this podcast are
Mhm.
people who have similar challenges to the ones that you've been discussing.
Mm. I think it's like for me, like I said, it's always going to be a work in progress because I think that's just how my brain's wired, and I get overly sensitive about things, and I'm naturally quite shy. But I definitely now think I've got tools. So it's been so beneficial, and I've loved it. But it's now, down to me to keep working on that and doing all those little things and keeping on top of it. And I see it as a real positive thing to work on. But I think that everyone can do it. And some of the, you know, ways that my brain thinks, if I can sort of start tooting my own horn and things like that, then pretty much anyone can.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. Because people sometimes think, oh, well, that sounds really great, that work you do, but I'm probably the exception that can't like I
Mm,
can't be helped. I've been having these problems my entire career. And I'm just always like, no, you definitely can. Everybody
yeah,
can. Everyone's
yeah.
brain is kind of wired the same. Yes, we have different levels of sensitivity and we have different challenges, but essentially, yeah, anyone can do it. I completely
Anyone
agree.
can go to Big Tesco at lunchtime or in the middle of
Yes.
the afternoon on a whim. That's the
Yeah,
message.
and put their phone in a biscuit tin when they go on holiday.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Vic,
Thank you so much.
for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So that's the end of the interview with thanks to Victoria for coming on the podcast and sharing with you all. I love it when people can feel able to be open and honest because I know that it will help someone who's listening. And again, if you want to do what Victoria did and come and do some private coaching with me, I will leave a link in the show notes. You can book a call to chat things through with me, tell me what your challenges are, and if I think I can help you, I'll tell you how. So enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you next week.